Formula One currently has 4 car manufacturers: Ferrari, Mercedes, Renault and Honda. That's pathetic. We need more than that. But it's interesting, the way that Formula One has evolved over the last few years, all of the major manufacturer representation seems to have disappeared. To reflect on that, here's my 10 manufacturers who used to race in Formula One, but don't anymore. By the way, only one of those 10 have actually won a Formula One Grand Prix in the last 10 years. I'll give you a hint.
Firstly, there's Alfa Romeo, who won the first ever World Championship with Giuseppe Farina in 1950, before eventually fading, returning with Brabham and Niki Lauda in the late 70s. And then they became a factory outfit once more, with no major success. And we're all still waiting for their return. But rumours are rife that Ferrari may well provide it one day. Not many people know that Aston Martin actually entered Formula One for 2 seasons, in 1959 and 1960, with an all-British driver lineup and lots of bravado. Unfortunately, this was the period when the car manufacturer was waning and the privateer garagistas were taking over, so the Aston Martin brand switched to focusing on James Bond instead. Next comes BMW, originally an engine supplier for Brabham, taking them to the World Championship twice, before returning in the year 2000 as engine supplier this time for Williams. After 6 seasons and a couple of near misses, they bought the Sauber team and ran for 4 years before the financial crisis forced them to sell up after just one sole victory. Another unlikely outfit to race in F1 is Bugatti, a strong force in the 30s, including winning the first ever Monaco Grand Prix, but their return in F1 was short-lived. They entered the beautiful Type 251 at the French Grand Prix in '56, but the car lasted just 18 laps. But rumours are rife that thanks to the Veyron and the Chiron, that one day they'll consider F1 again. When Ford first appeared in Formula One with Lotus, they were victorious instantly, with the famous DFE engine, winning titles with Tyrrell, Lotus, Williams and Benetton amongst others. In the 90s, they backed Stewart Grand Prix, and then took over as Jaguar before officially pulling out of the sport at the end of 2004. But only Ferrari have won more races in Formula One than Ford. Lamborghini was only a presence in Formula One for about 6 years, with smaller teams such as Lotus, Minardi, Larousse and even Ligier, but the factory effort at Modena was an embarrassing failure, and the dream of opposition to Ferrari faded fast, although the brand nearly powered McLaren in '93 before finally opting to give Ayrton Senna a Ford engine instead. More famous for Le Mans or rallying is Lancia, but before all of that, their incredible D50 turned heads all over Grand Prix racing in 1954. But after Alberto Ascari's tragic death a year later, the brand sold the design to Ferrari, and they actually won the championship with it in 1956, with Juan Manuel Fangio. Lancia's days in Formula One were over. The last Italian manufacturer in our list, Maserati, created one of the most successful F1 cars of the 1950s, the 250F. Winning on its debut in 1954 for Fangio, other racers such as Stirling Moss gave it an amazing lifespan of 7 years before its final event in 1960, but Fangio did win his 5th and final title for them in 1957. Porsche has won in pretty much every form of motorsport, even Formula One. Only the once mine thanks to Dan Gurney in the 1962 French Grand Prix, and it would be 2 decades before they powered McLaren, winning 3 titles from 1984 to 1986. A failed effort as engine supplier to Footwork Arrows ended the dream for good in '91, and ever since, they've focused on sports cars. Most recently, Toyota began their dream to conquer F1 in 2001, but in 8 seasons and despite 3 pole positions, 140 races as an independent and customer supplies for Jordan and Williams amongst others, there were no victories, and the financial crisis gave them the excuse they needed to finish up for good in 2009. What a waste. There were others who only supplied engines. Peugeot powered McLaren shortly after its Le Mans success, followed by stints at the Jordan and Prost Grand Prix teams, but there were no victories in nearly a decade. Even Subaru had a crack at Formula One with the little Coloni team, and they even tested with Minardi before eventually chalking it up to what can only be described as a very bad idea. And then there's Yamaha, so near and yet so far. The motorcycle manufacturer had stints with Zakspeed, Brabham, Jordan and others, and they almost won the 1997 Hungarian Grand Prix with Damon Hill and Arrows, just a lap away from the win. Specialist sports car makers have had a go too. Venturi in 1992 as owners of the small Larousse team, and Spyker, the Dutch company, who bought Midland in 2007 and led a lap of the 2007 European Grand Prix, before eventually selling up to Force India. You can still see most of these cars and entries at classic car shows and meetings, such as the Goodwood Festival of Speed, so keep an eye out for them. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great videos from Trade Price Cars, and if you want to drive away in the car of your dreams, visit us online at tradepricecars.com.